He killed more people in his entire life than he had in his entire life. Imagine the scene. A blind man, chained, humiliated, used as a clown by his enemies. But in his last seconds of life, he destroys an entire temple, killing 3,000 people, including all the leaders of a nation. This really happened, and it wasn't in any Marvel movie. You're about to learn the most brutal and shocking story of ancient times. A man born with supernatural strength, who tore a lion to pieces with his bare hands, who stood alone against entire armies, only to be completely destroyed by a woman. And worst of all, he willingly revealed the secret that kept him invincible. If you think you know tales of betrayal, wait until you hear how the woman who claimed to love Samson sold him for money. If you think you know epic revenge, wait until you hear how she wreaked such devastating vengeance that it changed the course of two nations' history. Comment "This is real" right now if you want to discover how a man can be so physically strong, yet so emotionally weak. And subscribe to the channel because this story will keep you glued to your screen until the very last second. Before we try to dive into this epic story, tell me in the comments, have you ever had to make a decision that changed your life forever? Because the story you're about to hear today is about the devastating consequences of our choices. If you like the content, give it a like. It's crucial for this story to reach more people. Subscribe to the channel because every week we bring you stories that will truly impact your life. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new releases. Now answer me. Do you believe destiny exists? That some people are born to change the world? Because the story you're about to hear began even before the protagonist was born. An angel appeared to his parents and told them, "This child will begin to free Israel from its enemies." But here's the paradox. How could someone destined for greatness end up blinded, humiliated, and killed? How could the strongest man in the world be defeated by his own weaknesses? The answer will shock you. This is Samson, and his story isn't just about physical strength. It's about strength of character, about temptation, about how our weaknesses can destroy our greatest gifts. Prepare yourselves, because this journey goes from his miraculous birth to the most epic and tragic ending you've ever seen. The dark times. To understand Samson's story, it's necessary to understand the context. We're talking about more than 3,000 years ago, when Israel was under brutal Philistine rule. 40 years of oppression, slavery, and humiliation. The people had turned away from God and, as a result, were left in the hands of their enemies. The Philistines weren't just conquerors, they were a war machine. They lived on the Mediterranean coast, possessed superior technology, and mastered iron, while Israel still used bronze. It was a desperate situation, but it is precisely in these situations that God prepares something extraordinary. The supernatural announcement. There was a man named Manoah of the tribe of Dan, who married a barren woman. In those days, infertility was considered a curse, a deep shame. They had lost hope of having children, but God had other plans. One day, while Manoah's wife was alone, something extraordinary happened. An angel appeared to her, but it wasn't just any angel. The Bible says he had a fearful appearance, like the appearance of an angel of God. Imagine the impact of that vision. The angel said something that would change everything. "You will conceive and give birth to a son. But be careful. He will be a Nazirite from the womb. He will not shave his head, nor drink wine or anything fermented, nor touch anything unclean. And this child will begin to free Israel from the Philistines." Comment below. Do you believe in miracles? Because this story is just beginning, and we already have direct divine intervention. The man who wanted to see the angel. When the woman told her husband what had happened, Manoah was bewildered. He prayed for the angel to return and give him further instructions on how to raise this special child, and God answered his prayer. The angel appeared again, this time while Manoah was present. But something curious happened. Manoah didn't recognize him as an angel. He thought he was a prophet or a man of God, and he made the mistake of asking the visitor's name. The answer was enigmatic. "Why do you ask my name, which is wonderful?" Manoah wanted to be hospitable and offered food. But the angel said to him, "I will not eat your food, But if you want to make a burnt offering, offer it to God." So Manoah prepared a sacrifice on a rock. What happened next was absolutely supernatural. As the flame ascended from the altar, the angel ascended into it. Manoah and his wife saw a celestial being ascend to heaven before their eyes. They fell prostrate, finally understanding who they had spoken to. If you think this story is amazing, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel because the best is yet to come. The birth of the destined boy was born and named Samson. From a young age he was different. The Bible says that he grew and the Lord blessed him. But the most impressive thing is that the Spirit of the Lord began to move powerfully upon him while he was still young. Imagine a teenager discovering he possesses supernatural strength. Samson grew up knowing he was special, that God had chosen him for a specific mission. But was this knowledge a blessing or a curse? The first passion and the first mistake. When Samson grew up, he made a decision that deeply disturbed his parents. He went down to Timnah in Philistine territory and saw a woman who aroused his passion. He returned home and said emphatically, "I have seen a woman among the daughters of the Philistines. Get her for me as a wife." His parents were astonished. "What do you mean? Marry a Philistine woman? Marry one of the daughters of Israel's oppressors?" They tried to dissuade him. "Is there no woman among the daughters of your brothers or among all our people that you should go and look for a wife among the uncircumcised Philistines?" But Samson insisted, "Take her for me, for she pleases me." Here we have the first indication that Samson would allow himself to be dominated by his passions. But the Bible reveals something interesting. This came from the Lord, who was looking for an opportunity to confront the Philistines. Comment, first passion, if you've ever made a passion-driven decision that changed your life. The lion and the honey. On the way to Timnah, something happened that revealed Samson's extraordinary power. A young lion approached him roaring. Any normal person would have fled in despair. But when the Spirit of the Lord descended upon Samson, he tore the lion to pieces with his bare hands, as if it were a goat. But there's something interesting. He didn't tell his parents about this feat. Was this a sign of humility, or a sign that he himself didn't fully understand what was happening to him? Sometime later, upon returning to the wedding, Samson decided to examine the lion's body. And he discovered something extraordinary. Inside the carcass was a swarm of bees and a honeycomb. He ate the honey and gave it to his parents, but he didn't reveal where he got it. This detail would be fundamental for what would happen next. The fatal enigma. During the 7-day wedding feast, Samson had an idea that would change everything. He challenged the 30 Philistine companions who had been assigned to accompany him during the banquet. "I will propose a riddle to you," he said. "If you can solve it within 7 days of the festival, I will give each of you a fine tunic and a change of clothes. But if you cannot solve it, you must give me 30 tunics and 30 changes of clothes." The Philistines, confident, agreed. Then Samson said, "Out of the eater comes food, and out of the strong comes sweetness." For 3 days they tried unsuccessfully to solve the riddle. Their frustration grew, and then, on the 4th day, they made a decision that would reveal their character. They decided to cheat. The first betrayal. The Philistines went to Samson's wife and threatened her. "Convince your husband to tell us the riddle. If you don't, we will burn you and your father's house. Did you invite us here to impoverish us?" Imagine this woman's terror. She was being blackmailed and threatened with death. So she went to see Samson and began to manipulate him emotionally. "You only hate me and don't love me," she said, weeping. "You have said a riddle before the children of my people and have not explained it to me." Samson tried to resist. "I haven't told my father or my mother, and I'm going to tell you." But she wept before him during the 7 days of the feast. She insisted without ceasing until, on the 7th day, he could bear it no longer and revealed the secret to her. Before evening, the men of the city came to Samson with the answer, "What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?" Samson immediately understood what had happened. His own wife had betrayed him. He replied bitterly, "If you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my mystery." The devastating revenge. What happened next was explosive. the Spirit of the Lord descended upon Samson with all its might. He went down to Ashkelon, 40 kilometers away, killed 30 men, took the loot, and gave the changes of clothes to those who had solved the riddle. But his anger was so great that he left the party and his wife and went up to his father's house. And the bride's father, to avoid trouble, gave Samson's wife to his godfather. If you're wondering how this story will get even more intense, leave a like and keep watching, because what comes next is breathtaking. The revenge of the foxes. During the wheat harvest, Samson decided to visit his wife and brought her a young goat as a gift of reconciliation, but his father wouldn't let him in. "I thought you hated her," the father said. "That's why I gave her to your companion. But isn't her younger sister more beautiful than she is? Take her instead." Samson was furious. This time he felt his revenge was fully justified. "Now I will be innocent before the Philistines when I harm them." So he devised a revenge as creative as it was devastating. He captured 300 foxes, tied them 2 by their tails, and placed torches between them. Then he released the terrified animals into the Philistines' wheat fields. The result was total destruction. Crops, vineyards, and olive groves were burned. It was a devastating blow to the Philistine economy. The cycle of revenge. When the Philistines discovered who had caused this destruction, they made a cruel decision. They burned Samson's wife and father, blaming them for what had happened. Upon learning of this, Samson swore even greater revenge. "Since you have done this, I will take revenge on you, and then I will stop." And he attacked the Philistines with such violence that the Bible describes how he struck them in the leg and thigh, causing a great slaughter. Then he retreated to a cave in the rock of Etham. The betrayal of one's own people. But the Philistines were not satisfied. They brought up a large army and camped in Judah, ready for war. The men of Judah were terrified and asked why they were being attacked. "We have come to capture Samson," the Philistines replied, "to do to him what he did to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah descended upon the cave where Samson was hiding. And there something happened that must have broken the hero's heart. His own men came to capture him. "Don't you know that the Philistines rule over us? Why have you treated us like this?" they asked. Samson replied, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." But his own brothers insisted on handing him over to their enemies. Samson agreed, but on one condition: "Swear to me that you won't kill me." They only promised to arrest him and hand him over alive. So they tied him with 2 new ropes and lowered him from the rock. Comment: betrayal of the people. If you've ever felt betrayed by people who should have your back, the battle of 1,000 men upon reaching Lehi, the Philistines shouted out to greet Samson. But then something happened that became one of the most famous stories of ancient times. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson with great power. The ropes on his arms became like flax burned by fire, and his bonds fell from his hands. Samson looked around and saw a fresh donkey jawbone. He picked it up and killed 1,000 men with it. Imagine the scene: a single man with a simple animal jawbone defeating an entire army. After the victory, Samson improvised a poem: "With the blow of a donkey, 1 heap, 2 heaps. With the blow of a donkey, I have killed 1,000 men." The miracle of thirst. But after this extraordinary victory, Samson faced a problem. He was dying of thirst. So he prayed to God, "You have given this great salvation through your servant. Will I die of thirst and fall into the hands of these uncircumcised people?" God answered his cry miraculously. He opened a spring in the very rock, and Samson drank, regained his strength, and revived. 20 years as a judge. Following these events, Samson judged Israel for 20 years during Philistine rule. He became a living legend, the man the Philistines feared most. But Samson was still Samson. His passions and impulses still ruled him. The adventure in Gaza. Once, Samson went to Gaza, one of the main cities of the Philistines, and entered the house of a prostitute. The Gazans, learning he was there, surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night, planning to kill him the next morning. But Samson woke up in the middle of the night, and instead of trying to sneak away quietly, he did something absolutely daring. He went to the city gate, tore it down, along with the posts and beam, and carried it on his shoulders, carrying it up to the top of the hill opposite Hebron. Imagine the impact of this action. The city of Gaza awoke without gates, completely vulnerable. It was a total humiliation for the Philistines. If you're impressed by this show of strength, give it a thumbs up. And subscribe to the channel because the most shocking part of the story is yet to come. Delilah, the femme fatale. After all these adventures, Samson fell in love with a woman who would change the course of his life forever. Her name was Delilah, and she lived in the valley of Sorek. The Philistine princes, desperate to find a way to defeat Samson, saw this passion as a unique opportunity. They went to Delilah and made her an offer she couldn't refuse. Convince him and discover the nature of his great strength and how we can master him, bind him, and restrain him. Each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. It was a fortune, an amount that would make anyone rich for the rest of their lives. Greed took hold of Delilah's heart. The deadly game, Delilah began her plan of seduction. Tell me, I beg you, wherein lies your great strength and by what means I might subdue you? Samson, perhaps sensing danger or simply toying with her, gave a false answer. If you bind me with 7 ropes of sinew that are still wet and have not been exposed to the sun, then I will become weak and become like any other man. Delilah took the ropes, tied Samson up while he was sleeping, and shouted, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. But he broke the ropes as if they were strands of tow burned by fire. The game continues. Delilah pretended to be hurt. Look, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now then, tell me with what you could be bound. Samson gave a second false answer. If they tie me with new ropes, which have not been used for any work, then I will become weak and be like any other man. Delilah tied him up with new ropes and shouted again, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He broke the strings as if they were a thread. The third lie, Delilah pressed him a third time. Samson, perhaps careless of his behavior, gave a third answer that was closer to the truth. If you entwine the 7 braids of my hair with the warp threads and drive the stake through them, then I will become weak and like any other man. Delilah did as she was told, nailing her braids to the stake and shouting, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He woke up and took the peg out of the loom along with the fabric. Psychological pressure. That's when Delilah resorted to her most powerful weapon, emotional manipulation. How can you say I love you if your heart isn't with me? You've mocked me these 3 times and haven't told me where your great strength lies. And the Bible records something terrible. And it came to pass that she vexed him daily with her words and troubled him, that his soul was vexed unto death. Day after day, Delilah pressured him, relentlessly, until finally Samson could stand the pressure no longer. Comment, psychological pressure. If you have ever experienced emotional manipulation, the secret revealed, then the unthinkable happened. Samson, the strongest man in the world, the invincible warrior, caved into the pressure and revealed his entire secret. No razor has ever touched my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, my strength will leave me, and I will become weak and like any other man. Delilah realized that this time he had spoken the truth. She immediately sent a message to the Philistine princes. Come back this time, for now he has revealed his whole heart to me. The princes came bringing the promised money. The final betrayal, Delilah made Samson lie on his knees and sent a man to shave off 7 locks of his hair. Then she began to afflict him, for his strength had left him. She cried out as she had done before, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He woke up and said, I'll go out this time like the other times and get rid of myself. But the Bible records the most tragic phrase in all of history, but he did not know that the Lord had already departed from him. The giant's remains. The Philistines captured him easily. The man who had faced entire armies was now as defenseless as a child. And then they did something that revealed all their cruelty. They gouged out his eyes. Samson, who had witnessed all their victories, was left blind. They took him to Gaza, the very city whose gates he had torn off, and bound him with bronze shackles and put him to grind in the dungeon. The strongest man in the world had become a blind slave, performing the most humiliating work possible, the secret growth. But while Samson was suffering his humiliation, something was happening that his captors didn't notice or didn't care about. The hair on his head began to grow after they shaved him. The outward symbol of its consecration was being restored. Wait a minute, do you think Samson's story ends here? With him a blind, humiliated, and defeated slave? If so, you have no idea what's coming. Because what happened next was so epic, so devastating, so extraordinary, that even today, 3,000 years later, people are still shocked by the end of this story. If you want to discover how a blind and chained man achieved the greatest victory of his life, keep watching and subscribe to the channel now, because you won't want to miss the most shocking ending you've ever seen. Comment, "I want the ending," if you're curious to know how this story ends. On the victory party, sometime later, the Philistine leaders gathered for a great celebration. They wanted to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and celebrate Samson's capture. "Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands," they cried out with joy. The temple was packed. All the Philistine leaders were there, along with about 3,000 men and women on the roof, watching the banquet. The cruel spectacle. When the wine went to their heads and they were merry, someone had a cruel idea. Call Samson to entertain us. They took Samson out of prison and made him a spectacle for themselves. Imagine the scene. The man who was once the terror of the Philistines, now blind and chained, being used as a clown for the amusement of his enemies. After mocking him, they placed him between the two central columns that supported the temple. The final request, Samson said to the boy who was leading him, "Let me feel the pillars on which this house stands, so that I may lean against them." The boy led him to the main pillars. Samson placed a hand on each pillar, and then, in that moment of supreme humiliation, something extraordinary happened. Samson remembered who he really was, remembered his mission, remembered the God who had chosen him from the womb. The final prayer, Samson cried out to the Lord, "O Lord God, remember me. O God, strengthen me just this once, so that I may take vengeance on the Philistines for my two eyes." It was a desperate but faith-filled prayer. Samson knew he had failed. He knew he had wasted his gifts, but he also knew that God was merciful. The epic ending. Then Samson took the two middle pillars on which the house stood and clasped them, one with his right hand and the other with his left hand. And he said, "Let me die with the Philistines."